Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritually Boujee Astrology, and we're going to take a deep look at the Mercury retrograde. The Mercury retrograde that coincides with eclipse season. The Mercury retrograde is why I keep saying April is going to be an absolute shit show. The Mercury retrograde. Yay. Okay. Oh, quick little reminder of all of my specials. Remember, all of my one-on-ones are on special $35 for an hour. And then I'm also doing a special on the personalized horoscopes. I'm not doing a big dwelling on this. If you want more information, you can go watch my prior episodes, literally up until back until the 1st of March, because this is a monthly special that we're doing. So moving along. Mercury. Let's go straight into Mercury. I want to do a couple of recaps to tie some things together in regards to some prior dates to connect them as to how we're going to be moving forward into the new dates. Because, the future dates are what we're trying to prepare for, but the prior dates, the past and the lessons of the past, are what are setting the stage for where we're going next. There are two prior Mercury retrogrades that directly impact this Mercury retrograde. One, and you guys have heard me talk about this one before quite a few times in the podcast, the one that happened last April going into May. That happened in the sign of Taurus between 5 and 15 degrees. The reason I say that it is still corresponding to this one is because of Jupiter. And right before this Mercury retrograde begins, Jupiter will be going over its point of shadow and going into new areas of the sky. The area that Jupiter was retrograde in the sign of Taurus was between 5 and 15 degrees. There are elements to things that were stirred up in last year's eclipse season and last spring's Mercury retrograde, because last spring's Mercury retrograde also corresponded with the eclipse axis. But one of those eclipses was a instigative eclipse for energies that we weren't prepared for yet, because we had an out of sign eclipse in Aries last spring. Okay. The other Mercury retrograde that is also tying into this one is the one that we had last December. Now, if you listen to that last Mercury retrograde meditative rant video that I did, I said that there are things about this Mercury retrograde that is directly impacting the entry of Pluto into Aquarius. And I literally lined all of that out for you guys as to why I was saying that. For many people, the last Mercury retrograde was a test. If we want to put this in some school terms, I'm going to say that was a midterm. And some of us did fine on our midterm. We recognized the patterns of certain people trying to come back around. It was like we met somebody, we fell into a situation, we started working with some people that triggered old wounds, old feelings, old insecurities, old situations. Even though this person wasn't the old person, in a lot of ways, that situation, that dynamic, that whole thing was very familiar. And some of us were able to immediately go, no. And we did not connect. We did not engage. We did not do this thing. We learned our lessons. However, not everybody knew that it was a test. Let's be fair. Yes, there are more and more people into astrology nowadays, but not everybody's into astrology. Not everybody passed that test. Not everybody passed the midterm. And the reason I'm using the analogy of that was the midterm is because there are elements from that Mercury retrograde that are tying into this Mercury retrograde. The majority of that Mercury retrograde was spent in Sagittarius. It was spent in squares to Neptune. It was in Jupiter's sign. And right at the end of that Mercury retrograde, Jupiter stationed direct at 5 degrees of Taurus, which was a retrograde point for both Mercury and Jupiter. Now we're getting to the edge of Jupiter's walk of shadow, where he will finally cross over certain points and go into new areas of the sky, which tells me we still have some old things that are part of the energy, as well as the new direction that it's going to take us. Now it's time for a final exam. And it would make sense that it would be a final exam because we're going into eclipse season. And if you guys have heard me talk about this upcoming eclipse season, I maintain this is the most important eclipse season part of this axis that we're going to have. 2 reasons why. Just a quick recap, because I know more and more people are starting to listen to me and you haven't heard all my old stuff, and that's okay. 1, usually in an 18-month axis, we would have 3 full moons and 3 new moons. We don't have that. We have 1 full moon. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And it is this upcoming Libra full moon that's going to happen on March 25th. We will have one new moon in the sign of Aries, 1 lunation in the sign of Aries while the North Node is in Aries, just 1. And that's the one that happens this spring. So again, this is the most important eclipse energy in this axis. And I have been meditating on this timeline for months. And I have a very clear indication as to how a lot of this is about to move forward. We've had some things that have been recently stirred up. We are going to have some things that are about to get reevaluated, restructured, renegotiated, reorganized, rebuilt, reconnected. But it's going to have a martial sense to it. It's going to have a passion. It's going to have a drive. It's going to have a purpose. It's going to mean something. And after all of the shit show shakeup that will be April, all of that shit show shakeup, we're going to go into May. And I've meditated on this for so long, and this is going to sound very, very weird to a lot of people, but I feel like every day of May is awakening to a new norm. Some people will actually have spiritual awakenings over these next few months. Some people. Others of us, we're going to have some type of new level of breakthrough or breakout or independence or excitement or major shift between all of these different transits that is going to launch us, in many ways, launch is the best word, into our new norm, our new reality. Many of us have been in situations where we have been feeling stagnant. And actually, the closer we have been getting to eclipse season, the more and more people are finally feeling the stagnancy. Some of us, hi, how are you, have been feeling stagnant forever. The thing about being in tune with these energies is that you learn the spiritual lessons really fast, you do the work, and then you're kind of going into a waiting period. And I have been in a waiting period for a very, very long time, guys. And I can feel that my number is about to get cold. I feel like I'm in the Beetlejuice like waiting room. Yeah, it's been a long wait. I'm not meaning that in like an ego sense. When I'm saying that, I'm just feeling like I can feel that something is about to change. All of us are starting to get to the point we can feel that change is coming. We can feel that it's getting closer. We can feel that it's about to take off, but we don't have all of the answers quite yet. And I feel like for a lot of people, the first round of answers are going to come through the week of the Libra eclipse, the days before and the days after. Because in between that Libra eclipse and April Fool's Day, that's when Mercury starts to slow down and turn retrograde on April Fool's Day. Now, I've been saying before that Mercury in Pisces had a very particular energy for us. There are very deep-seated wounds and deep-seated things that were being brought to the surface. Some of us, what got brought to the surface wasn't necessarily like a deep-seated thing that we were aware of. Some of us found out there was something going on in the body. Some of us had a whole different mental avenue to start to wrap our head around in regards to healing, in regards to connection. And some of us have started to make certain efforts once Mercury went into Aries to heal certain things. Mercury, in its deeper detriment of Pisces, doesn't do well. And many of us spent about 2.5 weeks trying to wrap our head around something. And now that Mercury is in Aries, there's a bit of an impatience. There's a little bit more of a reactiveness. There's a little bit more of anxiousness. There's a little bit more activity. There's a little bit more things going on. We can all feel it. We can. We haven't all been able to make an effort to work with it quite yet. Now, the time that I'm recording this, it is March 15th. Mercury's not in shadow. We haven't even got to that point yet. But Mercury is in Aries. And the last few days, I've already started to see those reactive changes in certain people. The other thing that we've had is we've had news in the big world perspective about things tied to social media. I warned about that a couple Meditative Rant videos ago. I warned about that. I warned that some of the decisions that were starting to be had that we didn't know about quite yet were going to have disruptive energies that are going to play through. Hey, that's starting. Okay? Okay. It's a lot. Oh. There are going to be efforts in a lot of things with a lot of people to kind of try to control something. And some of us will be able to enact control. But I feel like the controls that we're going to be doing are things that we were creating, we are working with, we are doing. Anyone that tries to control something that is out of their spectrum is going to meet huge levels of resistance. And that can happen in a multitude of ways. I will throw myself under the bus. This is my YouTube channel. A lot of y'all know my mom's in my full-time care. My mom has no control over this, but that's still my mom. So there's that parental aspect of it that, you know, if she wanted to try to put her foot down, she wouldn't really be able to do it though. I'm trying to use this as my example. If she wanted to try to reenact those timelines of being a full-time parent and not being in my full-time care, putting her foot down of like, you cannot do this. You can't do podcasting anymore. You can't work from home anymore. You have to go get a real job. That would fall on deaf ears. It wouldn't work. Some people will be trying to enact certain levels of control and bullying and temperament and pressure in this Mercury retrograde that ain't gonna stick, because it's a Mercury retrograde and only so much sticks, you know. Temporary energy doesn't stay that way forever. Now, let me pause this. My window's open again and there was a train going by. I don't even live that close to the train, but yet I could hear it very loudly. You might actually be able to hear it in the background. I don't know. Okay. People will be trying to enact certain forms of rule and pressure, especially as we get closer to that Aries new moon on April 8th. And again, those types of controls and pressure will be temporary. They won't be a part of the big picture, the big plan, and everything that we're working on. They're not meant to be. But there will be attempts. And we're already starting to see the attempts in the big picture, real world scenario. But not everybody's in a situation where control and pressure are a part of the programming. Again, many of us are going through an area where we are trying to create, or we are trying to get over situations, where we are trying to break free from certain people. And again, people that have been trying to enact control, many of them are going to find themselves in situations where they're going to lose it. And not everybody's going to be okay with that. That wasn't actually in my notes. That's something that I'm picking up on intuitively right now. So that's fun. But the timeline that Mercury was going through Pisces was meant to stir something up. Stir things up, emotional things, deep-seated wounds, deep-seated trauma, creativity, and different avenues of as to how we move forward in artistic, creative ways. For some people, it has to do with healing. And Mercury's entry into Pisces literally stirred up something physiological. And now the actions and reactions of Mercury and Aries is starting that new routine, going through treatments, going through healing. There is an energy tied to reorganizing, restructuring, rebranding, redoing a lot of things so we can be prepared for where the new norm is going to be once we get into May. We're going to know about it before May. Literally that last 10 days of April, we're going to know what it is. And then it's, again, allowing for our mind to come to terms with, this is the new. This is who we are now. This is where we're going now. This is what we're doing now from this point. The next 2 months has so much dynamic change. Many of us are going to have an energetic whiplash. Because there is so much dynamic change, there will be more and more tension, arguments, frustration, and reactive energy. The more of these transits that go into Aries tells me that more and more and more. There will be the potential of riots. There will be the potential of fighting. And I'm not just talking about the argumentative fighting. There will be other kinds of fighting. Many of us think we're on a trajectory to do certain things, and our timeline will get derailed over the next month and a half. And the thing is, many of us are not going to see it coming, because there's one planet that keeps showing up in this entire mix that is very hard to account for. And that's Neptune. There will be heavy Neptunian energy all throughout this timeline. Heavy emotional energy all throughout this timeline. And that does add a little bit of a harder part to this equation. When I look at Neptune, I've literally described this to a client in the last week. I look at Neptune and I think Russell Brand. 100%, like that dude. The guy that was strung out in the early 2010s and all that, doing Forgetting Sarah Marshall and all that, like that version of him. And then the current version of him now. Like whenever I talk about Neptune, like I really feel like I'm describing Russell Brand. And it's a hot mess. Neptune is a planet of illusion and delusion. He does not want to be seen clearly. He doesn't want to be responsible, but he doesn't necessarily want you to be responsible either. Neptune is the guy that shows up to the summertime pool party. It's a nighttime party, but he's got sunglasses and leather pants on. Like it doesn't vibe. You get a stick of gum from him. That's not gum. It's LSD. It's something else, something that floods the senses. And he just wants to see your reaction to it. Neptune's kind of a dick. And knowing that Neptune's energy is here tells me that whenever it comes to these things that are not easily explained, spikes in financial markets, spikes in inflation, spikes in all of these different areas that just happen magically, they too are going to have a harsh reality. Now, the other element of Neptune is the fact that one of the dates that we're going to start with is the Sun-Neptune conjunction. But the week before, during the new moon in Pisces, we had a Mercury-Neptune conjunction. And that energy for some people had a peaceful effect. They were able to create. There was some level of artistry. There was something that they could do that just filled our senses and filled the room. It was so imaginative and great. And it was fantastic. It felt amazing. But it wasn't that way for everybody. And many more people became far more in tune and far more aware of the negative impact of what was in the gum, of the cup we've been drinking. And we were able to get far more aware of lies, fraud, and deception. And Mercury's entry into Aries is now how we're going to react to that. As we go through the start of these transits, which I'm about to put the chart up, many people going into the shadow start of Mercury's point of shadow will be revealing certain things to people that is going to be a part of the Mercury retrograde. So I'm not going to start this all the way back on the charts. I'm going to actually stick to like when Mercury is going into shadow. So when I pull these charts up here in a minute, I'm not starting this all the way from February 23rd. Yeah, February. I was like, I had chicken scratch. February 23rd. February 23rd is when Mercury went into Pisces. It was there from February 23rd to March 9th. I'm not going through all of those dates again. If you want more information on those dates, I have so many weekly episodes and everything else. I don't need to go that far back. I'm going to keep this to the weekend timeline whenever Mercury is going into shadow, all the way to whenever Mercury is leaving shadow. But you're also going to see that I'm going to include things tied to Jupiter and things that have to do with Venus and Mars. Because all of these planets are huge players as to what's going on. It might not be easily recognizable in the moment, but the whole idea is I want to string all of these Mercury retrograde dates together as best as possible. But I'm telling a lot of people, like, we have prior dates from a while ago that also have led to this energy too, that has led to this final exam, that has led to whether we're going to commence to the next grade, to the next challenge, to the next path, to the next journey. So let's take a look at the dates. All right, we are starting off on St. Patrick's Day. Why? Because this is whenever we have the Sun-Neptune conjunction. Now, this is not when Mercury's entering shadow. It actually happens the next day on the 18th. But you can't tell me that we don't have the ability to have something get revealed. And for many of us, whatever is getting revealed around this time directly speaks back to what was going on when Mercury was in Pisces. So you can't tell me that whatever is getting revealed to certain people around this time, whatever's coming to light, whatever's coming into focus, whatever we're discovering or creating or doing is not impacting Mercury, because Mercury hit that conjunction to Neptune first. Let's be absolutely clear about that. The next wave of awareness is right here. And that's directly a part of Mercury entering shadow, because Mercury enters shadows the next day Here's 15 degrees. Mercury's hitting that conjunction to the North Node. I've got this Monday, March 18th at 10:10 a.m. So there's a direct element here that speaks to certain things coming to light, certain things being revealed, certain things being spoken about or created or dealt with. Now, the human effect is parts of this is going to be from the weekend. Parts of this is actually going to be a part of what's going to happen on Monday and Tuesday in that manifestation area. It really comes down to the human effect. If most of the energy the last few weeks has been something tied to your health or the health of somebody that you love, then that can manifest over the weekend too. If most of the energy that you've been dealing with has had to do with your relationships or these levels of personal decisions that are not subject to 9 to 5 hours or whatever your business hours are, because I know I got a lot of like nursing staff too, and y'all do some all-nighters. Again, the human effect is this can manifest anywhere between the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. Making that part absolutely clear. There's these final energies of revelation and things that are coming to light and things that are coming into focus. And not all of us are going to be anticipating it. Some of us are not going to be the ones learning something. We're going to be the ones revealing the situation, revealing something to someone else. And this can be both in good ways and bad ways. We're going to be telling somebody how much money we made. We're going to be telling somebody about our new job opportunity. We're going to be telling something that we've been working on, or our project, the man cave, putting something mundane in there, converting the garage, whatever we're doing in that regard. And knowing that once we get a little bit deeper into the project, that there's layers to what we're going to be working on. And for those that are new to me, I have a very big history in construction also. So I use a lot of construction terms whenever it comes to Mercury retrograde. So there's your warning. Moving along. Okay. March 20th, that is the start of Aries season. Up until this point, we've had little mental reactions where we're a little bit more forceful. In all actuality, the first rounds of Mercury going through Aries, like I've also seen an uptick in people's road rage. A little bit more on the road rage side, but I'm expecting more. But literally each day after Mercury entered Aries, like our mental energy picked up. For some people, that also spiked some levels of anxiety. We have a lot of restlessness. If you don't have good places to put your energy, then you're feeling like you're just vibrating with nothing to do. It's going to get a little worse when the sun goes into Aries. So have some place on a regular basis to put your energy. I said in the March month ahead forecast, when we get to March 9th, when Mercury goes into Aries, really starting it on March 10th for a lot more people because it was so late in the evening. If you wanted to create a new habit for yourself, given that Mercury was going to be in Aries for 9 weeks, and we're deeper into it now. So, we're at date, 5, 6 or something like that right now when I'm recording. That was the best time to actually do that, because we can develop a habit. We can create a new routine that's more likely to stick. And the reason I was suggesting all of that was, again, for some place to put your energy, to put your focus, so that way you can work out some of the restlessness each day. If you didn't do it around March 10th, you might start it around March 20th. You still got plenty of time to work with. You're going to want to have something to do in your physical routine to work out the restless energy. Trust me. We're going to have some sleepless nights. The more stuff goes into Aries. Okay. Moving this along. Excuse me. On March 21st, we have Venus's conjunction to Saturn. And whenever I do this weekly part, like I'm going to tell you right now from here, Venus rules where the first eclipse is going to be. And that's going to be the full moon eclipse. But there are things that are going to be coming to light, we're going to be far more aware of, that's going to really put some umph into our energy somewhere between March 20th, 21st, and 22nd, that directly feeds into that full moon eclipse. Some of us are not going to fully know what that is until these days. Some of us do know. We know exactly where things are taking us. We know exactly what we're going to be working on. We're just waiting for the dates. We're waiting for the energy to catch up. We're waiting for other people to get in tune with our energy. But not everybody's there. That's the human effect. So do expect some big things to come to light to really set in another physical energy for where we're going to be going in the last week of March. Okay, this is part one of that. Venus's conjunction to Saturn. On the 22nd, Mars is going to actually be entering Pisces. That's going to happen later in the day. And what I want to really bring up is the fact that the first 2 weeks of Mercury going through Aries, with Mars being in Aquarius, again, we have been trying to wrap our heads around, talk about, deal with things that we have been struggling with, working on, dealing with for a long period of time. Mercury's entry into Pisces stirred up all the stuff that's been bothering us, brought up all the old wounds, childhood trauma, all that stuff we need to work through. And what's about to happen? Mars is going to enter Pisces. For some people, it's going to be about their beliefs. For other people, we're going to be finding a new voice in regards to deep-seated beliefs, finding a new voice to work through our trauma and work through the abuse and work through what has happened. For some of us, we're going to be finding our voice as to how we stand up to the recent situation. Because again, I said, some of us did not pass that midterm and we had new situations and new people that came through in that Mercury retrograde that was a part of a test to see if we were ready for whatever Pluto and Aquarius was at. Some of us failed that midterm. And we're going to be far more determined to pass this final exam. Okay. Okay. The dynamic of Mars going into Pisces, though, really changes how the rest of Mercury in Aries is going to be. And considering Mars is going to be in this sign for 6 weeks, many of us are going to be a lot more motivated by our beliefs. But considering there's still a Neptunian element to this situation, some of us are going to be very deluded about what we're thinking and what we're wanting and what we're believing. That's going to be a hard energy for a lot of people to recognize in themselves. But there's a whole new level of righteousness and pious and, fueled, emotionally fueled, so much ego. There's a lot of ego for what we're about to be doing. That's the best words I got. Okay. Moving us along. We're going to get to now March 25th. And that is when we have our one and only full moon in this 18-month axis. It's not perfecting at this time. I'm not worried about the exact times and all that. That's not what this is about. We're more focused on the Mercury retrograde. But after this eclipse, Mercury starts to slow down. There is something that comes into light, that comes into focus, that comes into the situation over these few days that speaks to either something ending, and for some people, this ending will feel rather abrupt because you have not been aware of what was coming. Like maybe it was revealed to you during the Venus-Saturn conjunction, and you were like forced into a decision to like rethink or redo something, and you are hitting a completion in this full moon. A lot of times full moons are completions. But for other people, considering all the other conjunctions that have happened with Saturn in this sign, this is role and this is responsibility. And this is the new balance. This is a level up in the energy. We're all going to be in different places, and this full moon will get its own video at a later date. So I'm not going to do a whole dwelling on this, but some of you know what you're moving into, and you know you're about to hit a level up stage, and this can be a very big level up full moon. For other people, this will be a completion. Okay. Moving this along. There's not a whole lot going on after the eclipse. Not really. Oh, I'm on hour still. Move this by day. So what's going to happen is, like, we hit this level of completion. We hit this ending. We hit this level up. And then it takes a few days for us to process, because Mercury is going to start to slow down. So what this also tells me is that for a lot of people, some things will happen during the eclipse. Some things will be a part of the energy of the next few days following the eclipse. And once we get to April 1st, that's whenever Mercury is going to turn retrograde. So that's going to happen later in the day. So I've got this early in the morning. So let's forward this up. There it goes. Somewhere between 5 and 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Mercury turns retrograde. There it is. Now, what's going to be interesting is about the day that Mercury turns retrograde, the moon is in Capricorn. The moon is actually in Saturn sign. So even though our logical brain is on overload, our emotional side will actually be very stable. And many of us are going to start this Mercury retrograde with some level of shift in our responsibilities, a shift within the elders, a shift in authority, a shift in certain roles. There's a level of responsibility right around this time frame where we feel like the only way to turn something around is to get with a new authority figure, to talk to a different authority figure, to talk to an attorney. Some of us are going to end up in court during this time. But there's a big energy here that speaks to whatever's turning in our mindset has a very responsible tone to it. Whether we are having to take on new responsibilities, whether we are having to help another person get through a situation, and we're like the Saturnian elderly guide on how to we get through that situation. But a lot of this energy speaks to a necessary, timely, almost karmic turnaround based off of Mercury's energy. Are we pissed? Absolutely. Absolutely. Are we motivated? Absolutely. Are we suddenly driven to correct something? Absolutely. Many of us, this is going to be a restructuring, rethinking, reorganizing time frame. For others of us, though, this is going to be a very purposeful situation in regards to the reevaluating and revision that we're working through. And this is the start. April's a shit show. Yay. I will not stop saying that. It's not. Or I'm not. The reason I'm not going to stop saying that is because even though some of us can be very aware that we're changing things, some people are absolute asshats when they feel super motivated to do something. And I'm anticipating a lot of that too. Anyways, moving this along. Oh, April 1st, that's the Mercury retrograde. April 3rd, this is Venus's conjunction to Neptune. And I don't love this. I don't love this time, because this is either going to be how we find a solution, and that I don't feel like everyone's going to be in the solution, and this is why I'm saying this, or we learn a new level of deception. We fall prey to some over promising to have an under delivering later. Like somebody's going to be doing anything grasping at straws to still have control or anything along these lines. Some of us, this is where we're going to tell somebody, like we're going to have that final click in our own energy and like, nah, I'm done. No, I'm not working with you. No, we're not doing this. And they're going to be feeling like they have been slighted. And again, because Mercury is retrograde, that level of emotional reaction, we're not going to be fully anticipating. We're not going to be fully used to their energy in regards to how they're going to do things. So this one right here is really interesting to me. And the reason I'm saying this, and I'm going to go ahead and back this up by hour to show you this, I feel like this is going to be a very big trigger day, because right whenever Venus and Neptune are the most exact, we also have Moon Pluto. And some people, this is going to be a click as to how we turn something around and how do we change it aesthetically, how we improve it in one way. But in other ways, this is going to be a trigger. This is going to be in that part of that test. This is going to be a part of that energy as to like, are you learning the lesson? Some of us are going to fill in some blanks that first go around that we shouldn't be filling in on the test. Be aware of that. Okay. Between April 4th and April 5th, and this is going to depend on time zone because it happens so late in the evening, that is when Venus is going to enter Aries. So now we have another planet going into Mars's sign while Mars is in a Jupiter sign, while Mars is in Pisces. Now, when it comes to Venus being in Aries, this is her deeper detriment. Some people will suddenly be a lot more empowered in regards to like women's rights. I've always noticed that with Venus and Aries, like there's a lot more like forthrightness in regards to certain women's rights. Given how some of the dynamics have been lately, this can also have to do with like LGBTQ situations and their rights that can start to really like getting powered and coming through around this time. Protests can really start to commence because again, Mercury is retrograde and so many people are going to be dealing with things where they're not thinking clearly. I'm not saying people aren't doing the right things. I'm not saying anything negative about any community. I want to be absolutely clear about this. But we can be feeling a very righteous energy to defend certain things, to do certain things, to act upon certain things that we are still not seeing clearly. And even if you are not in a negative sense of that, if you are just on the sidelines and you're seeing other people getting grabbed, I'm preparing you for what you're going to see in your surroundings, what you're going to be seeing on the news, what you're going to be seeing from your brother, from your cousin, from the rest of the family, from your best friend, from their best friends, from these people. Like if you work in an area where it constitutes large groups of people, you will see how the masses can become very diluted very quickly. And that's going to be a little bit rough. I like Venus and Aries in regards to like women's power. I do like the empowerment part for that. But I also know that whenever Venus goes into Aries, we can also see more combativeness to said groups, the LGBTQ, women, children. There can be more combative things in their direction. I am not wishing negative on anybody. I am being realistic. Is that all going to happen on April 4th? Is it all going to happen on one day? No. But Venus is going to be here for a little bit. And this is the start of that. Okay. Okay. On April 8th, that is the new moon eclipse. I'm doing this by hour again. I keep goofing that up. That is the new moon eclipse that's going to perfect. Now, if you are traveling to see the eclipse, like there's a whole line of states that where this is going to be the most viewable. Oklahoma is actually one of them. And I have an announcement tied to this that I'm going to put into the next weekly episode. as to like what I'll be doing for this situation. But I also want to bring up the fact that a lot of these areas, so I'm going to put this in the podcast. I'm actually going to do this in a couple different areas for social media. A lot of the regions and the areas that people are going to be traveling to see this eclipse, they're going to very rural areas that do not have large police forces. And what a lot of people are going to see in this temporary energy is an influx of military. I've already seen this in my local newspapers. I've been starting to see a little bit of this on TikTok, and people are starting to question why. I'm from Oklahoma. One of the bigger areas for totality is actually right here in Oklahoma. And the biggest region where you can see this is all very, very rural. And I'm going to put everything in flat numbers for people to make people aware of like why there's going to be this temporary militant type of action or reaction within people. And I'm using that, one of the things that I know is going on for the eclipse. So there's been some newspaper articles that have been going out about how many National Guard have been requested to come to Oklahoma and Arkansas and some of these other areas for the eclipse. And people are losing their minds. Like, why would you need that? I can explain that really easy. Putting things in flat numbers. Some of these small towns, their entire county population is like 5 to 10,000 people. Some of these small towns do not have their own police force. They rely on the county sheriff. So if you're going to visit these small towns that have a population normally of about 2,000 people, but all of a sudden overnight, that town is going to grow to 20,000 or 30,000 or 50,000. That is frightening to those local police forces, because that level of outnumbering from these people, these foreign people that we don't know, those cops don't know these people that are coming in. Those people that are coming into these rural areas of America, I'm not just going to say Oklahoma, but America, where they're going into, y'all don't know that region either. You don't know what you're walking into. And knowing what's going to be going on during that time frame, I do feel like there's going to be some need in a multitude of ways for some level of militant reaction. Is it based off the eclipse? No. It's actually based off of another energy that's playing with this eclipse. And it only happens one time. It only happens during this eclipse. And that is Mars's conjunction to Saturn. So I'm going to tie all these together. I'm not staying on these eclipses. They're getting their own videos later on. Here's the new moon eclipse. This is, of course, happening on April 8th. The next day, we start this Mars-Saturn conjunction. It's actually going to go the most exact on April 10th. Saturn is authority. It is the rules. It is law. It is judges. It is the people that oversee in some type of authoritative fashion. It is our elders. And Mars's energy here is literally a martial energy. It is the god of war. It is the military. It is that level of action and reaction. And there will be things that happen during the eclipse that people are not going to realize, they're not going to understand. That level of deep-seated Aries Martian energy, people are going to do some stupid shit around the eclipse. And we're not going to fully know about it for a few days until afterwards. Until then, there's going to be this a whole new level of miscommunication as like why something went wrong. Why wasn't things going a certain way? We're going to see that in the big picture sense, but some of us are actually going to be seeing that in our mundane lives too. We're going to be trying to get something new and immediately being hit with some type of wall, some type of new rule. We're going to have to put our foot down with certain people and be like, look, you don't talk to me this way. You don't act this way. You can do this during the eclipse. You could do this in the days following based off of that Mars Saturn, or you can be putting your foot down around the eclipse and you can get a very harsh reaction right around this time frame. Now, with the moon's conjunction to Jupiter, it should be a luck element. But given the condition of everything else, I don't feel like this is completely a luck element. I feel like a lot of people are going to be reacting in temporary energy. And I'm afraid people are going to do some stupid shit because we're not thinking clearly. Be aware of the people that you surround yourself with whenever we get to this timeline, because I do feel like that we will see an influx of certain type of like people physically reacting to a lot of things. I don't wish this on a lot of people, but some of us are going to be taking some very hard levels of reaction around this time. And we're not going to get to some level of solution or clarity until the 11th, because that's the Mercury cazimi. Anytime Mercury comes into the heart of the sun, I know a lot of astrologers like to say like every planet is a cazimi. Not every planet, whenever it conjuncts the sun, is a cazimi. There's really only two planets that create cazimis, and that's Venus and Mercury. Why? Because they're the two planets that are in between the Earth and the sun. In this energy, Mercury is actually coming into the heart of the sun, and in direct alignment, we're going to have Sun, Mercury, Earth. There's some type of news, some type of situation, some type of information based off of whatever occurred in the Mars Saturn conjunction, whatever occurred in that Moon Jupiter square, that immediately results in new information coming to light, a decision coming to light, a decision being announced and pronounced and reacted upon, because this Mercury cazimi is perfecting while the moon is going through Gemini. Very loud, boisterous, all the information spreading like wildfire type of situation. There's some big things that will be going on that are going to impact a lot of society when it comes to this time frame. And this Mercury cazimi speaks to new information coming to light, new things that need to be communicated, new things that need to be announced and pronounced and worked through in a multitude of ways. Okay. After the Mercury cazimi, it's like we spend a few days wrapping our head around some things. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have transits. We will have transits. We don't have major transits going on until we get to the 19th and the 20th. Now, what I will say is that this entire time frame, as we're going through parts of April, Jupiter and Uranus are getting closer and closer to their conjunction. So we're going to see more and more unexpected, exciting type of energy that's going to be impacting people in big ways. Because again, this is not a common transit. It only happens roughly every 13 to 14 years. The reason I keep saying that is like the last one that we had actually had like multiple hits between Jupiter and Uranus, and that happened in the sign of Pisces because of a retrograde. But in this regard, we're only getting one connection. And this is meant to be something that is like hopeful and boastful. And we're getting closer to when this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is going to be hitting. But we're going to see some of the elements of like the excitement and the boastfulness and the hopefulness and the healing and the abundance and the prosperity. Like we're going to be seeing those ticks and changes more and more after that cazimi. I think that's when we're going to notice it a lot more. However, we're going to fast forward this. We're going to go straight to the 19th. And that is when Venus is going to hit her conjunction to Mercury. And it's a little bit closer right there. So there's Venus's conjunction to Mercury. Now this time, the last time these two had a conjunction, Venus was in retrograde. And it was literally when Venus was stuck at that 28-degree mark of Leo. She was stationed, had already turned retrograde, but we hadn't had the full elements of her going backwards quite yet. There were things that we were realizing and working through and talking about, that Mercury hit that conjunction And then literally there was like this parting of ways. Mercury kept moving forward and went into Virgo. Venus started going backwards. So there was almost like a trigger right then. This is a similar kind of trigger, but it's different. Venus is direct. Mercury is the retrograde one. But after this point, Mercury is going to start to slow down. Mercury's at 17 degrees. We're now a week away from Mercury turning direct. And we're also getting very, very close to this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Now, this actually goes the most exact in a few days. Actually, it's the next day. It's on the 20th. Sorry. But I've been saying for quite some time, there's a lot of this energy that speaks to the prior timelines. And this is where I feel like we get some level of clarity or reward or something along these lines as to what we are putting back into order from that previous time span, from that previous timeline. We're getting the next level of something. And again, we're feeling a lot more righteous and empowered, and we're seeing a lot more motivation. But this has some level like a solution energy to it, to me. On April 20th, that's the start of Taurus season. Hi, Taurus season. And there will be some of the elements of the energy after that Venus-Mercury conjunction where some of the things start to calm down. It's a weird calm down because we still have a lot of excitement going on. But I mean, like, one level of the mental angst and anxiety will nullify. It will settle. It will go down a notch based off of the sun going into Taurus. And as some of these planets start to exit Aries, more and more of that angsty energy will diminish. Okay. Also on the 20th, this is actually perfecting later in the day. That's when Jupiter and Uranus go the most exact. But I want to be clear about this energy, and I'll do another meditative rant video just about Jupiter and Uranus later. We're not to this yet, but I'm telling everybody, like, this has got huge emphasis in regards to things tied to energy and sudden changes in our independence, sudden changes in regards to like technology. There's something very evolutionary to this energy. There's something very exciting to this energy. More and more people are doing things with technology. So we get something very, very hopeful here. And in that hopeful energy, there's some level of stabilizing, some level of stability, some level of turning our minds around about something. Okay. On the 24th, we get the full moon in Scorpio. And this is how I look at the full moon in Scorpio. Whatever lunation started eclipse season, we need that same lunation to end eclipse season. We started eclipse season in a full moon in Libra. To me, the way I equate it, this is how I've always done this. The next full moon is the end of eclipse season. And here is the full moon in Scorpio. Now, there's something interesting about this full moon in Scorpio that I'm going to tie back to prior eclipses from a very long time ago. And that is Mars and Neptune. This is a full moon in Mars' sign. This Mercury retrograde, all of this other stuff that's been going through, Mars' sign. In the first full moon in Scorpio that happened back in 2022, it happened in a Mars-Neptune conjunction. This eclipse season will end, this Mercury retrograde will end with a Mars-Neptune conjunction. I have been saying for a very long time that a lot of the energy that is starting to culminate as we go through April, for some people, is a year in the making based off of Mars, months in the making based off of like Jupiter or Venus, depending on who's your Time Lord and activation planet, or when certain things got activated for you. For other people, though, it's 2 to 3 years in the making because we were trying to unstick certain areas in the fixed signs. So there are elements of this full moon in Scorpio. It is not an eclipse. I'm not going to act like it's an eclipse. It's really not. But it ties back to a prior eclipse. And for some people, it will be the tight little bow for things that got activated for you in that 2022, May 2022 full moon in Scorpio. For other people, though, you don't know that far back. You don't remember that far back. I always say, like, go back through your Facebook posts, your social media, your photos, your journals, your calendars, go back for what was going on during that time span and kind of think of then, because there's a lot of energy that culminates right here between April 20th and April 30th that are a couple of years in the making. And that's just based off my meditation. For some of you guys, it's even longer back. We're like tying a tight little bow around things that was going on back in like 2010 and 2012. I'm not harping on that one nearly as much because not everybody goes back that far. Not everybody remembers back that far. I know this because whenever I talk to you guys in your one-on-ones, we all have different timelines. So, but there is a big part of this energy of the last few days of April that are literally clearing up and culminating things that are months to years in the making. We've been trying to work on something and launch something for quite some time. And now we're about to take that energy to the next level. We've been trying to get out of negative situations for quite some time, and we're about to take that to the next level. We've been trying to get something corrected in our lives for quite some time. And now we're about to take that to that next level. And that really speaks through the last days of April. Here's the full moon in Scorpio. 2 days later, April 25th, Mercury is direct. Mercury is direct. Yay. Jupiter and Uranus are still in their conjunction. Mars and Neptune are still entering their conjunction. And for the last few days of Venus going through Aries, Mercury is direct. So we have some level of turnaround, of correction, of things of how we're going to progress from here. And there is a slow level of progression that's going to follow. Okay. The Mars-Neptune conjunction actually goes the most exact on the 28th. Put that right there. So April 28th, here's Mars, here's Neptune. And look where the moon is again. The moon's back in Capricorn. It's back in the Saturn sign. A lot of things that were very, very timely that needed to happen. However, a lot of the things that have happened in temporary energy. And a lot of things that started to launch as we go through parts of March and April. They will only last for a little bit of time because so much of it was a reactive energy. So much of it was an instigated energy that we had to move very, very quickly. And again, I'm letting people know some of what starts. I've been saying this on some of the episodes. I'm going to continue to say this. Only some of what starts going through April and May is going to stick. Only some of it. Others are going to have to get revised later because it's going to go through pressure tests. Oh, but let's not take away from getting everything corrected and moving into this new normal, because we're moving into a new normal. All right. On April 29th, Venus enters Taurus. She enters her own sign. She enters the sign that does not have a node. In fact, it has Jupiter and Uranus and the sun. And this is a much better energy for her right now. We're not as much worried about that South Node in Libra. We're starting to stabilize many things the deeper we get into these Taurus transits. Okay. On April 30th, 1 day later, Mars enters Aries. And in my opinion, Mars entering Aries is going to do like some solid actions and work to solidify some of the things that have recently just been put together. There are still going to be levels of disruption and frustration. Sometimes if you have to go do work all over again that you've already done once before, it makes you mad. I'm a huge person in this whenever it comes to like building stuff. You're going to notice some of that type of energy that like some of these things are going to make you mad. but we're going to go back through and we're going to double check everything that we've worked on. And we're going to put in the extra hammers, the hammer time. We're going to put in the extra nail work. We're going to put in some extra things to make something stick. But we're also going to find extra levels of disruption about the things that have occurred. And that's going to be its own set of energy. So I'm not going to get too deep into that, but we're going to become a little bit more aware of that further in as Mars goes through Aries. Okay. The other thing about April 30th is this is also when Venus will square Pluto, and this will be right before Pluto turns retrograde. So I'm not harping on Pluto's retrograde either, because that's going to be its own energy. But a lot of what we have done and dealt with since Pluto has entered Aquarius, we're reaching a cap point of like, okay, this is as far as we're going to advance at this time. And then we're going to start to have to go over those things once Pluto turns retrograde. Okay. May 7th, that is going to be the new moon in Taurus. I know I jumped like a huge amount of dates right then. Here's the new moon. It's pretty close. I don't need to move it by hour. I'm only including the new moon because this is happening in Venus's sign, and this is happening, you know, right following that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. This is happening right in between like Venus and Uranus. And knowing that Venus, the sun, Uranus, and Jupiter, they're all going to hit these different levels of conjunctions as we get deeper into May. I do feel like there's something new that is meant to solidify in this energy, but the new, again, has more to do with like our new normal. Every day in May, we start to wake up. It's like trying to wrap our head around, this is our new normal. This is our reality now. This is how we do this now. And many of us are going to be in very new places once we get into parts of May. And then we get to May 13th. And we got two things about May 13th. One, Mercury leaves shadow. Okay. Two, the North Node moves off of 15 degrees. The reason I'm putting both of those together in this analogy is because the week that Mercury went into Pisces, that's when the nodes hit 15 degrees. And I said this back in some of those prior episodes. There are direct elements that started to come through in that late February timeframe. So all of Mercury and Pisces, that directly impacts what starts to play out once we get into these Aries transits, once we get into eclipse season, and once we get into the Mercury retrograde. There's a common element of what I've been seeing from the Mercury and Pisces timeline. Some people are dealing with deep-seated wounds and their trauma, and they're needing to heal from a lot of things, and that's a lot of what's been coming up. Others are getting more in tune with their faith and their spirituality. You are connecting with the right tribe, the right people. You're finding your guru. You're finding your groove. You're finding something. For other people, it's aesthetic and it's creative, and you're getting your creative juices going. And you had all of this inspirational energy that now you are creating and acting upon. And some of the initial reactions, whether negative or positive on any of those levels, are going to have a lot of back and forth because of that Mercury retrograde. Not everybody's prepared for what that Mercury retrograde is going to represent. Not everybody's prepared for the level of fighting and tension and arguments because you got triggered by something. They didn't. Vice versa. Because they had an old wound come up, but you didn't. And a lot of people will not be seeing eye to eye in what they feel has been wrong. And there will be tests to our beliefs, tests to our way of seeing things from the past, tests in regards to what we believe to be true. Sometimes beliefs are going to be, you know, that philosophical, spiritual side. Other times it's going to be about the facts, figures, and receipts. If you have receipts, keep them. I'm a huge fan of the CYA folder. Every job I ever had, there was a CYA folder. Even if it was a digital folder, I didn't care. CYA. Be prepared to CYA. Because there's a lot of those need for those receipts that are going to come up later on in this Mercury retrograde. Because there's going to be a lot of people that are fighting to overcome the emotional reactions. But whatever we get corrected, whatever we're inspired to build, whatever breakthroughs we start to have, wherever we end up going by the end of the Mercury retrograde, yes, some elements of it will be temporary, some elements of it will not stick, but not everything. The long-standing stuff for some of us that we've been working on something for a long period of time, we're just waiting for that reactive energy to like level some things up and open up some floodgates. Is everything that coming through those floodgates going to be good things? Hell no. Not everything's going to be good. That's why I'm comparing it to floodgates. Whatever comes through is whatever is going to come through. And once it comes through, it can't go back. Once it comes out, you can't take it back. We have to work through it. There's a lot of emotional reactions that are going to really fuel fires. And I'm saying this in the big picture spectrum because of the things that I'm picking up on in my meditation, but I'm also saying this on the individual levels. And the more and more of you that get grabbed by this and don't necessarily understand, you need to figure out like, okay, if there's something that I'm not seeing clearly, what the hell do I do? These dates are here for a reason. It's to help you go back and look. If you struggle with going back to look, you struggle with doing that part, that's why you schedule with people like me who look for these kinds of patterns to kind of make those things a lot more useful to deal with. There's going to be a lot of confusion and frustration. And I mean it when I say there's a big part of April. It's going to be an absolute shit show. It is. But the other side of that, the ending of that, the results of this test, there's liberation. There's excitement. There's advancement. There's a whole new energy of things that are going to come together. And I really feel like once we get into parts of May, we are settling into some level of this is our new norm. This is our new reality. This is how we do things from here. This is where we go from here. This is how we're going to proceed, how we're going to succeed, how we're going to advance from here. Think of what you did, the decisions you made, the shit that was getting stirred up when Mercury was in Pisces. Because a lot of the things that came through, people did not initially know how to react to them because Mercury was in Pisces. But so much of the energy of going from Pisces to Aries screams reactions and actions. And some of these reactions are not with clear communication, not with clear thoughts, and not with clear intentions. And there will be some very diluted intentions that lead to, again, combative and reactive energy. Some people are going to fail the next test. And how that manifests for them is going to be different for everybody. Some people are going to pass that test and leave people behind And that weight of no longer being tied to certain situations or tied to a certain thing is going to be the new norm, because so many people will feel free. I don't have to adhere to these things to make you happy. I don't have to do these things to make you a success. Now I can focus on me and I can be a success. The level of shift and change that's going to come through can't go straight into it because we won't appreciate it the same way. We need the tension. We need the drama. Some of y'all need the drama. We need the fighting. We need the frustration. We need this other thing to make that end result more palatable and more savory. There's a whole different energy that we're moving into. And many of you can feel it. You've been feeling it for a while. You've been feeling more and more like you're in the rubber band. Some of us were holding parts of that rubber band, waiting to see how somebody's going to launch. Some of us, we are in that rubber band going, oh, it's getting more tense. It's getting more and more and more. And you know where you're at. You know, if you've been doing certain things and working on certain things for a long period of time, and that you're about to launch the next phase of your business. You know that you have been going through frustrations and arguments and tension over and over and over again. And you're about to be free of a certain commitment, whether that is a business partnership, whether that is a friendship, whether that is your ties, contractual ties to a company. For some of you, it will be your actual relationships. But whatever you feel like you're tied down to right now, you're not going to be tied to it for much longer. And depending on when the release of that rubber band hits, some people are going to be scrambling. Because if that release is the full moon in Libra, the scrambling is, oh my God, I just got let go. I have to get a new job immediately. I have to do this now. And we're going to take the first thing that comes up that's not well thought, that's not well researched, that's not where we want to be. But it was the first opportunity. And it's going to be a part of the temporary energy. Whatever we start to settle into as we get through April, through the end of the Mercury retrograde, going into May, this is going to be the new norm. But the new norm will only be good for so long. It will only feel successful and like things are falling into place for so long. And then we will go into tests. And for some of people, those tests are going to come in parts of the summer. For a lot more of us, it's going to be later this year. So I'm letting you know, if you have to make a temporary decision because you have no other choice, accept that it's a temporary decision and don't put your heart into something that you're trying to make work that's not going to be there. That's not meant for you for a long time. Only so much of what we're going to go through, only so much of the decisions, only so much of the energy that is a part of April is going to stick. Some of it won't even last the entire Mercury retrograde. We're all in different places. It's going to get interesting. Okay. This is a different kind of video. Like I said, Meditative Rant videos, I start to tie in a lot more of the big picture things whenever I pick up on them. Of course, I will do much deeper breakdowns on each of these transits as we go through each weekly transit to kind of get us more solidified as to each of them are going to come through. However, if you have big things coming up in the near future, a lot of them are already on your calendar. And if one of them are on these dates, then you need to be aware in case it's going to be a shit show. So, anyways, all right. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Hit me up with questions, hit me up with concerns, and I appreciate everybody's time. I'll talk to everybody soon. Subscribe.